How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting, and welcome back to Chaoshead, where things got get interesting. US made an entrance into the stage, and we get some of her key backstory, which was really interesting. So she had a twin sister. She was the favorite sister. Her twin was kind of always like the disappointment of the family, apparently. And she often would push rewards towards her sister, even though she secretly wanted them. Like the stuffed bear was an analogy of the fact that like she had like resigned herself to being the second favorite, to being the least of the two, but kind of leaned into the role because she probably cared for and wanted to protect her sister. But she also was one of the victims of the first NewGen case, which was the mass suicide. So she was on that rooftop. She was in that video, which is really horrifying to think about. But that's why Yua was interested in the NewGen killings, because she wanted to find out what was going on, especially because after the event, her parents kind of just forgot or seemingly stopped caring or even acknowledging that they had another daughter. Like they entered a delusion or something. Or like reality seemed to phase, so like it seemed like it wasn't actually real or hadn't happened. And so that's really, really odd. Because why? Why would they do that? And so now she's trying to figure that out. She's coordinating now with Ban and with Momose, whoever the girl, the kind of informant who's working at that the bank system, I think. But it's really interesting, and it's kind of brought her back because I had kind of dismissed her as a character. I thought she was kind of odd or like, whatever. But the fact that brought her back and already made her so intriguing is very interesting and very cool. Which is nice to see. We're finally kind of getting a good feel for all the characters, because they've been introducing characters for a while, but I felt like none of them had much teeth. The closest was Ayase and Rimi, because they were the ones getting the most development at first. Senna was really interesting, but they kept her very mysterious. But now we've seen like more about her, and also seeing her human side has helped as well. And Kozupi, psychopath girl, she's fun. All of them are really interesting, so I'm curious to see where things go from here. So let's jump into it, because now that we're hearing that, I wonder, now that we're back with Taku, like maybe Ban's going to approach him again. I feel like it's inevitable that they're going to want to question him. Like they're gathering information right now, but he's on their radar. They just don't see him as a flight risk, I'm guessing. So when are they going to actually confront him again? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. The other thing I think could be interesting here is that Rimi's kind of come back into the picture finally. So is he going to talk to her about the things that happened recently? Because that's also a confrontation I want to see happen, because I need to know how is she going to dismiss everything? Is she going to continue to try and like make him avoid talking about D-swords, because apparently she doesn't want him involved in that, despite the fact that she's working with Shogun, and Shogun says he needs to have that D-sword. So how's that going to play out here? I'm very curious. So let's jump right into it, right? Now that it was November, I had a feeling that the sun was already setting much earlier than before. By the time Rimi and I started heading home together after school, a faint orange was already staining the sky. Yeah, so this is, okay, so it's kind of like I thought. I felt like they were going to have like a conversation, so makes sense that they're having one. Despite being silent up until now, Rimi abruptly apologized. Oh, I almost forgot. We also saw the flash that like his sister's hand has a bandage, like she has been cut or received some kind of injury. So we'll see what that plays out as. Anyway.
Taku, いろいろ大変だったんでしょ?
It was the first time I'd gone home with Rimi in a while. I was genuinely really happy she'd come back. She'd even been the one to initiate it, saying, let's walk home together. Since we'd only gone home together no more than twice, I'd secretly been worried that it would never happen again. However, that turned out not to be the case.
一緒にいてあげられなくてごめん。知り合いが例の地震で怪我しちゃって。ずっと面倒見てたから。
Okay. Even though I hadn't asked, Rimi was kind enough to explain herself to me. Though to be frank, I almost all of Rimi's words were going in one ear and out the other. The bandage I seen on Nanami's wrist at the lunch break. It had been burned into my eyes and refused to go away.
もしかして怒ってる?
Not really. In the end, I'd failed to say anything to Nanami. I'd been too scared. That's like theme of your life, dude. Even though Nanami is my little sister, even though I was Nanami's older brother. Something had just felt unbelievably strange, and I had no idea what it was. The nurse had said that Nanami had no injuries. The hand that Shogun had delivered to me at my base had disappeared in the fridge without a trace. It all had to have been a delusion. But if that were true, why had Nanami's right wrist been wrapped in a bandage? Though it was possible that I was just overthinking it, and that she'd gotten burned or stung by something, or got some other stupid minor injury that didn't matter at all. Yeah, that was probably it. That was the most logical answer. But even now, I was still too scared to check. Even after failing to save her, I was still just pacing around doing nothing, not even trying to talk to her, my very own sister. I really was the worst brother ever.
ねえ、タク。おーい。もしもーし。怒ってるならそう言ってよ。無視されるのって結構傷ついちゃうな。
Aww.
え
I looked over at Rimi, who seemed weirdly disheartened.
あ、
もしかして、私の話聞いてなかった？
Yeah, that's a bit rude, dude. Like, she's genuinely, like, bearing her heart to you, and he's just like, but I get it. He's pretty distracted. After hesitating for a second, I nodded. And the moment I did, Rimi jabbed my cheek with her forefinger.
石てっきり無視されたかと思ったよ。紛らわしいことしない。
Ow, you just jabbed your nail in my cheek.
あ、大丈夫？
Rimi finally stopped poking me and and came out with the words I'd heard so often from her. Words of worry and concern. Words I'd heard from Rimi again and again.
お昼ぐらいから顔色良くないよ。元気もないみたいだし。もしかして誰かにひどいこと言われた？だったら私に教えて。怒ってきてあげるから。
She was acting like an older sister, or a guardian even. Rimi was just a hopeless meddler. Well, that'd been obvious from the moment she'd given an otaku freak like me the time of day. I was grateful to her for being worried about me. Before now, I'd either bottled up my worries deep inside or posted them anonymously on that channel. Should I tell her about what had happened with Nanami? But when I told her about the D-swords that one time, she hadn't believed me at all. Then again, that would be a natural response from anyone sane. So if we were to tell her about Nanami, she'd probably either A, be speechless, or B, just laugh in my face. And if that were true, there really was no point in telling her. All I needed was her to stay by my side. It would be better to bring those topics up with Kozapi or Senef instead. Interesting. He was so obsessed with her until like a day ago now, and now he's just like dismissive.
相変わらず汚いね。
Yeah, nothing that seems to never change. Mere moments after stepping foot in my base, Rimi muttered that in exasperation. And yet, paradoxically, she seemed to be smiling happily as well. Weird.
変わってないな。この部屋の汚さがまさにタクって感じ。
That's such an optimistic point of view. Also, feel like you're trying too hard a little bit. If you're gonna be like that, then just clean it. Be my guest. With a sigh, I turned onto my PC.
ちょっと。帰ってくるなりパソコン？友達が来てるんだから、少しはおもてなししてあげようっていう気持ちにはならないのかな。
She's got a point, man.
ねえ、お話ししようよ。
Oh, baby. After hitting me with such an unreasonable demand, Rimi sat down on the sofa. It's not that unreasonable. If I tried to have a one-on-one conversation with a 3D girl, it would be over in seconds. As much as I'd gotten used to talking with Rimi since I'd had a lot more chances to do so recently, I still doubted it even last 5 minutes. Buddy, yeah, honestly, I'm with you on that one in multiple ways. Am I in that green bar? Because these always are spicy, right? We haven't done red in a while, but I'm kind of getting scared of the red, and let me tell you why. I don't know. I doubt it matters, because it probably won't matter until critical moments in the story, but the game does seem to keep track of things you do. There was a chain of events that I had to answer questions in the right way in order to even proceed with the game, right? I feel like that was a flag to let me know that, like, some things I make decisions on matter. There's other times where delusions, despite wanting them to be positive or negative, will swing negative. But I always wondered, like, he has the ability to affect reality, and I feel like the way he thinks about things has an importance. So I don't know if the game keeps track of how many positive or negative delusions I have, but part of me is curious to wonder whether that actually would matter. It'd be interesting if it did. but it might also be kind of unfair. I'm not sure what to expect from this game. Like Steins Gate, when it had its choices that mattered, it became pretty apparent in the time when those choices were going to matter, even if you couldn't tell exactly what was the right decision per se. And I wonder if it's going to be the same here. So but for this one, I either want to do neutral and kind of let things go, or I want to do green. I'm kind of scared of the red one. And I feel like we get enough negative ones that I'm not that interested in pursuing negative ones too often. So the question really here is like, do I want to keep it neutral and just let him try and have an actual conversation with her? Or do we have a little positive delusion, probably feel a really like, you know, risky bisky for a bit, and then have the same conversation anyway? Maybe we do that anyway. Moreover, my head was already fully occupied with the stuff about anatomy, so I very much didn't feel up for casual conversation. So I resorted to just ignoring her, sat down in my chair, while remaining painfully aware of my own worthlessness. Yeah, dude, you gotta stop this. I sensed Rimi moving behind me. The rustling of her clothes is growing closer.
だから、無視しないでよ。
Aww. Hey, I haven't seen him in a while. I also like we get Sierra Tan right here. It's not doing the wibbly thing either. I feel like this was one of those decisions that doesn't matter. It'll be the same regardless. And Taku looks so tired. Before I had a chance to turn around, I was embraced from behind. A gentle floral scent hit me. My back was struck by the soft sensation of Rimi's breasts. Cool.
寂しいよ。そういうことされると。
I must have been running away from reality again, giving myself a delusion that was a lot easier to swallow than the real world. Upon thinking that, the sheer emptiness I felt overpowered any lust I may have had, and I was no longer able to enjoy the delusion anymore. Rather than taking her and pinning her down on the bed, I decided to throw all things out I could never throw out all the things I could have only voiced in a delusion such as this.
僕だって寂しかった。辛かった。
Oh.
リミがこの一週間全然連絡くれなくて。
Hang on. This might be him, like how the light faded down. I wonder if he's thrown off the delusion here. Like, was that him willfully exiting his deluded state? That's interesting, because that could imply some really potential things to do in the future. And the music's kicking it too. I could feel the movements of Rimi's body directly against my back. Her chest faintly rose and fell with her every breath. As obvious as the fact may have been, it reminded me that Rimi truly was alive.
ごめん。一緒にいてあげられなくて、ごめん。
Oh, this music sounds familiar. Like, did they use a track very similar to this in Steins Gate? Because it sounds familiar. Rimi tightened her embrace around me.
私の中でも、まだ迷いがあって。どうしたらいいか、わからなくて。ちょっと考えてみようと思って。
Doubts about what, though?
Huh?
Doubts, like what? What could she have been talking about?
そもそも私、タクと一緒にいていいのかなとか、
Again.
このままの関係を続けるべきなのかなとか。
Okay, first of all, relationship. Weird way to phrase that. What do you mean? Second of all, this is, again, remember we've been doing the things before where she seems to, like, hear his thoughts? But we have Kozapi who proves that that's a conceptual, like, thing. What if Rimi can do that too? Maybe it's only with him, but what if she can do that too?
でもね、このままじゃきっとダメなんだ。それじゃ何も救えない。
Okay. Why though?
ねえ、タク。私が最初に願ったのはさ、一つだけだった。なのにどうして、私は、際限なく望み続けちゃうんだろうね。
Why do I keep wishing with that end?
あの空を見つけたときに、私は。
The sky. That's another. So Ayase talked about the sky too. I had no idea what Rimi was talking about, nor did I know how to respond to it. Silence enveloped us. I could hear Rimi's gentle breaths close to my ear. But no matter how long I waited for her to end it with some silly punchline, none of it ever came in the wafting silence. Was it possible that this wasn't a delusion? The moment I considered that, a wave of anxiety ran through me. In reality, Rimi was hugging me. She was pressing tightly against me. That realization alone nearly destroyed any sense of reason I had. I had a feeling that in this situation like this, if I pinned Rimi to the bed, she'd let me have my way with her. With a gulp, I... Good timing! Huh.
今の何?
Rimi let go of me in surprise, and the tender sensation vanished along with her. A complicated mix of both relief and disappointment spread through my chest. Wait a second, Rimi just heard my Sierra 10 notification tone. Oh, how embarrassing. When I opened my email software, I saw about 3 messages from Grim telling me to join the chat room. Now that I thought about it, I hadn't really chatted much with Grim recently. We'd used to talk online pretty much every day. But since I'd been refraining from playing ESO, it'd been around 10 days since we'd last talked. Alright, so while Rimi's here, we're just gonna start chatting online. God, this dude is something else, man. Yo. Hey, Nerd Heart-kun, I've been waiting for you. There's been another NewGen. What are you even on about? Insert ASEC 2 art here. NewGen, dude? WTF you thinking I'm on about? How exactly we go from NewGen to NewGen? New generation, new gen, new gen, new gen. Come on, that crap's obvious. Use common sense for fetch's sake. More importantly, there's a 7th case.
どうしたの?
Likely having noticed my gasp, Rimi stood up and walked over to me. She peeked over my shoulder, the monitor.
第7の事件.
It happened again, another new gen. How long was this darn thing gonna go on for? Was I next? Would I be the victim in the 8th case, the 9th?
タク、気にすることないよ。何も怖いことなんてない。タクは狙われたりなんかしない。
Sure.
全部タクの被害妄想。ね。
That was completely baseless encouragement. You can't calm me down with such weak crap, Rimi. Also, again, she seems to be reading your surface thoughts. I noticed that. Anxiety aside, Rimi was pretty much the NewGen's news guy at this point. He'd been keeping me in the loop about basically everything. Even now, he was going out of his way to link a bunch of blog posts and news articles about it. Seemed like he really wanted me to take a look. Biting my lip, I reluctantly clicked the first link. Alright, here we go. 7th NewGen case, dubbed the DQN puzzle. Oh, that's right! They did talk about that before. I don't know if I can read this whole thing. November 4th, approximately 4:50 a.m., the dead bodies of 3 men were discovered hanging from an iron pole near the railroad in Shibuya, Tokyo. The deceased have been identified as 19-year-old Fujikai Kohei, unemployed, 20-year-old Anzawa Subaro, a college student, and a 19-year-old Takaki Ryo, a construction worker. According to the police, the bodies were cut in half at the waist, but the wounds did not indicate to be used any sharp weaponry. Furthermore, the bottom halves of each of the bodies were interchanged with one another, combined in new combinations which were tightly sewn back together with thread, carved into the bodies with the letters D, Q, and N, respectively. The police are investigating the possibility that this may be a message left behind by the culprit. Oh, I read the whole thing with that anyway. On the popular anonymous online message board channel, images of the incident were leaked prior to the official coverage of the event. It has already been accepted that the 7th case of the New Generation Madness, aka NewGen, it was christened the DQN puzzle due to the manner in which the top and bottom halves of the corpses were recombined. Notably on that channel, the term DQN means an individual lacking basic common sense. Regarding the serial NewGen cases, the mourning families of the victims have been taking legal action against some particularly offensive posts on that channel as a mood that has sparked fierce debate online. How would you even enforce that, though? You'd have to be able to confirm who they were, and especially this time, that'd be hard to do. Also, these side like quotes like Zako Queen, Zako Live, things, hentai anime. And then girls with big tits, like, oh, Katie, sheesh. Don't use drugs, though. Don't use drugs. Related articles, interview with Yuri Brightman, UBC Television. That's right, that's the one guy that talked about the things. It's interesting that it's related. 1,000 calls about Esper boys flooding overnight. His body was glowing. Mysterious eyewitness testimony you won't see on TV. Japan's fake Esper boy tops YouTube viewership ranking. Aww. Poor guy. Alright, duplicate thread. Okay. I don't know what there's a link there. It is I, Anonymous. NewGen for the win. NewGen for the win. Wreath. Wait, it says DQN, Lamau, literally zero connection to the other cases. Police are dumb as fetch. Ruffle. You're trying to say it's one of us anti-DQNs? With the lower body swapped around and crap, it's like a puzzle, but with corpses. If only I could trade in my upper body for some alphas, Lamau. Our Esper boy Nishijo found the perf for us anytime now, lol. A new gen bearer. So, new gen number 1, group dive. New gen 2, man-child. New sign, crucifixion. Vampire, numbskull. Finger food, DQN puzzle, to be continued.
今日午前4時50分頃、
Oh,
東京都
gross.
渋谷
Look
区
at
の
that.
線路沿いで男性3人の他殺死体が鉄柱に吊り下げられているのを通りかかった新聞販売員の男性が発見しました。警察の調べによりますと、殺されたのはいずれも渋谷区に住む無職藤田康平さん、大学生の安沢三郎さん、とび職の高木亮さんの3人です。3人とも胴体の部分が切断され、それぞれの上半身と下半身が別々に入れ替えられて糸で縫合されていました。
And that's the thing that's so crazy. It's like, so Kozupi said she didn't kill the 3 guys that were beating us up, but it doesn't seem like a coincidence that the 3 guys who attacked us, he even called them DQNs in his head, and now 3 guys have died by being bisected by something that seems way too sharp to be a real implement. That sounds like a D-sword. My first knee-jerk guess would be that it was Kozupi, but she specifically said she didn't kill them. Now, she could have been lying, but she didn't seem like one who would lie, considering she didn't lie about anything else.
3人の額にはそれぞれ謎の傷がつけられており、警察では犯人からのメッセージではないかとみて調べています。渋谷では2ヶ月ほど前から猟奇殺人事件が頻発しており、警察では今回の事件も同一犯による犯行の可能性が高いとみて捜査を続けています。
Like, do you imagine how insane? Like, I don't care how big a city you're in. Can you imagine the insanity of a series of like really like targeted, associated murders in the past 2 months have been happening in your area? Like, would you even go outside at night at that point? Like, I'd be terrified. At the end of the news clip, photographs of the 3 victims were shown. I had seen those faces before. Crap.
あいつらだ。
知ってるの？
昨日僕に絡んできた。
I'd given them my wallet, but they'd kicked my butt anyway. They had then fallen unconscious, and when I woke up, Kozupi was beside me. The 3 of them had been collapsed on the ground, covered in blood. I dug my wallet out from my pocket and stared at it intently. When I came to, Kozupi had been carrying it, and she'd given it back to me soon after. Could the person who killed those 3 be? I don't think so. No, definitely not. The last time I'd seen them, they'd been beaten to a pulp and covered in blood, but they hadn't been cut in half or anything. Which would mean they'd been killed after Kozupi had left. It had to have been Shogun. The wrinkly a-hole was trying to provoke me. Dang, he really was committed to driving me insane. Just how far was he willing to go? I wanted to vomit. I clutched my stomach and it churned in pain. Excuse me. Was I next? Would I be next to die?
終了。
A hand reached out from behind me and pushed the power button on the monitor. The screen went pitch black.
落ち着いて。気にすることないよ。ただの偶然だって、きっと。
No, Rimi. I know what you're trying to do. That's not coincidence. Why was Rimi acting so ridiculously optimistic? This couldn't possibly be just a series of coincidences.
それより、お腹空いちゃった。ねえ、私が行きつけのお店があるんだけど、そこにご飯食べに行かない？
Like, oh. that would really, like, that rubs me the wrong way. Like, it's very clear she's just trying to make us forget. She doesn't want us to think about it. She just wants us to move on. And, like, I understand that he was, especially at first, being really paranoid, but we've crossed well past the paranoid stage. We are well within the territory of, like, full conspiracies are happening, and we're somehow involved. So, like, I would be really put off by her being so dismissive.
安くて美味しいんだよ。私が保証する。まあ、お客さんはおじさんが多いから、私みたいのが一人で行くのはちょっと恥ずかしいけどね。あ、それと、駅の中に入らなくちゃいけないんだった。渋谷駅のコーナーにあるから。ちなみに、山手線内回りと外回りのホーム、どっちにもあるんだけど、私は断然内回りの方が好き。
Food, huh? I really didn't have much of an appetite right now. Felt like Shogun was holding a knife straight to my throat. Like he was saying, I can kill you whenever I please. Please just let me go. What had I done to deserve this? I couldn't take it anymore. So what are you gonna do, boy? Well, hey you. Kishimoto Ayase was laying in the hospital bed, idly gazing out the window. No bars lined the outside of it, in fact, the fact which set it apart from those at Arkheart Medical, where Ayase had stayed in the past. So her source is there. All that stood past the window's frame was the landscape of Shinjuku, decorated by skyscrapers and illuminated by the sunset. Flocks of pigeons soared freely through the sky, flapping their wings in their heart's content. Every now and then she would gaze upon the sight with a pained expression. Her slightly tired eyes were empty and bleak, her irises reflected nothing. Her lips, which could let flow a voice so beautiful it shook the youth of Shibuya, were now sealed tight. Not even so much as a hum escaped from them. Following her suicide attempt, an event which caused quite the turmoil, she had been admitted to the psychiatric ward of a large hospital in Yoyogi. Her injuries were already very nearly healed. According to the doctors, it had been nothing short of a miracle that she had been able to survive a fall from that height, let alone with barely even a scratch. However, she had indeed hit her head fairly hard, and as such she had been rushed to the hospital, primarily so they could see how the situation would develop. It had already been over a week since then. However, despite her having been admitted for such a reason, all seemed to entail a few rudimentary tests taken every couple of days or so. Beyond that, she had been rather neglected. Her hospital room was private, so no other beds inside it. Ever since her stay had begun, her D-sword had been leaning against the window, constantly emitted a blue light, yet nobody who visited ever seemed to notice. Not that there had been many visitors to begin with. Phantasm fans would attempt to force their way into her room daily, but as they were always caused a disturbance in the process, the hospital had an excuse to forbid them from visiting her. And since Ayase was somewhat detached from her family, there was almost no others who came to visit her. Her fellow band members had made an appearance once, but Ayase used that opportunity to announce her decision for the band to break up. They had not contacted her again since. Oh boy.
岸本さん、
It's the nurse!
体温計ピピってなりました？
A nurse wearing white scrubs opened the door into the room and swiftly entered. Ayase slowly turned to look at the nurse's face, then took out the thermometer that had been resting under her arm. It was as if she had only just remembered its presence. The nurse took a look at the recorded temperature shown on the digital screen, then took note of the clipboard she brought with her.
37度1分と。
I think that's like a little low, right?
ちょっと熱っぽいかしら。
Oh, it's like a little high. Oh, 36 is normal.
ズキズキするわ。頭。
Ayase grimaced in pain once again.
あら、また頭痛？でもそれは薬の副作用よ。気にしなくてもそのうち良くなりますよ。
Okay. Having recorded her temperature, the nurse consoled Ayase with a kind smile. Her expression was so gentle. It was clear to all how she was able to put her patients at ease. I like the nurse. And yet, despite the nurse's attempts, Ayase simply pushed her hand against her forehead as she shook it back and forth. Ayase had been plagued by mild headaches ever since she had first been hospitalized. They were not especially painful, but they still left her with an uncomfortable feeling that refused to go away, one that felt like her brain herself was convulsing. It even reached the point where her ability to think was impaired. As well as this, her body would feel as heavy as lead. Ayase had experienced such symptoms in the past, namely when she'd been institutionalized at Arkheart Medical. Back then, her head had constantly been split apart by painful headaches, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, deprived her of all sleep and emotional stability. That sounds like hell, holy crap. I remember, like, I've had headaches before. I remember once having a true migraine. It's likely only happened a couple times, but the worst one, it was odd because it was a response to a physical trauma. I'd gone sledding in the wintertime. We went up into the mountains in the out west where, like, we found this really, really big hill. It was almost like a big bowl shape. Not like two-sided, but like on the side of the mountain, it just like started off really steep and then like slowly leveled out to a big kind of a flat field, and on the other side was like a stream. Somebody had constructed a ramp out of snow before we got there. Somebody else had done it, but we took advantage of it. And I remember we were riding and like going off of it. And one time I climbed up really high because I knew we were leaving soon. So I was like, I'm gonna get one more big one off. So I like rode down. I was riding on an inner tube, but it was like one of those. It wasn't like an inner tube like you see that are made for like, you know, sledding or on snow or going on water where it has like handholds built into it. This was literally like someone had grabbed the inner tube of a tire, like an actual tire, car tire, and we'd inflated it outside of like a tire tube is contained by the rubber outline that you see when you look at a tire, like that outline. It kind of holds it its shape and it helps keep it, it makes it so the pressure has like a conformity and can stay consistent. If you take the actual inner tube out and inflate it, it makes a big donut, which is funny because that's how most inner tubes start. Like that's what it was originally back in the day, and like we just developed commercialized versions that you're probably more familiar with. Anyway, I was on one of those and it was great. Sliding down the hill was fantastic. I get going pretty quick though, and I go off of the ramp, and when I launched into the air, I had a buildup of ice on my gloves from playing around so much and rolling around in the snow. And so as I launched into the air, the tube slipped out of my hands and it sailed away from me. So I made a jump, probably went about 10, maybe 12 feet in the air, and landed onto the snow. Now, snow is not a terrible thing to land on, but from a height that big of a jump, it wasn't pleasant either. I hit pretty hard, and it knocked the wind out of me, like really bad. Like sometimes you get the wind knocked out of you and you're like gasping for breath. This was one of the ones that like I smashed into the ground, tumbled, and then lay there trying to breathe, but my lungs were essentially they'd collapsed. So because of water is ionic, it sticks to itself. And so when your lungs fully collapse and deflate like that, you actually like have to force them open again, and it's very difficult. So I struggled for a bit and then kind of like gasped and like had to like was panting and like also was just like kind of in physical pain from slamming into the ground. But happy to be alive and breathing. I didn't think much of it. But then that night I went to bed and had the most insane splitting headache I've ever experienced. So bad I could barely think, and I definitely couldn't sleep. And I eventually drove myself to the store and got some extra strength, like ibuprofen. It took like way more than you normally should. And that finally knocked me out. And the next day I was fine. But like, I still remember to this day just how like, it felt like the world was exploding constantly. And lights and sounds felt magnified 10 times. It's like, I remember I was in a room and there was a clock in the room. And the ticking of the clock sounded like someone was just slamming like an iron pipe against the wall, like just like kong, like it was so bad. Those were memories she did not want to resurface. The past she had sealed away, the events around 2 years ago, and yet her headache was causing them to flash back into her mind once more. Oh gosh, oh jeez, that's horrifying. They're doing water torture? To them, a dark room, a single window locked behind bars. Apart from the wall on which the window stood, the rest of the walls were covered with mirrors. Ayase had been placed in the center of the room, sat in a crude steel chair. She was wearing headgear with countless cables protruding from it. Her hands were tied to the back of the chair. Her head was locked in place with her chin tilted slightly upward. Not another soul was present in the room. Thus, all that she could be heard was the sounds of Ayase's labored breathing and the metal groans of the chair she sat upon. Holy crap. Saliva trickled down from the corners of her mouth, accompanied by moans akin to those of a beast's. If anybody were to hear them, they would never have been able to guess that they were coming from a girl as young as her. She was being tortured, slow, methodical torture, one that made very, very little sound. The method only involved one single thing, not even action. A drop of water falling from above onto her forehead every 5 seconds, on the exact same spot. That was all it took. And it would continue unrelentingly for 2 full days. The result? Ayase could think only of the droplet that would fall next. Her senses were sharpened to their limits. And each time a drop fell onto her forehead, another hallucination would be born. One in which each and every nerve across her body was plucked out one by one. One in which the bones of her entire skeleton crumbled to dust. One in which her head was pierced by a long, sharp oval. One in which all the liquids in her body, including her blood, froze to ice. One in which the skin lining her entire body slowly rotted away before eventually peeling off. Assailed without end by these sensations, Ayase could no longer maintain her sanity. Yeah. Freaking crazy stuff. I remember, like, it was a Mythbusters episode, which I'm sure you could look up, which you should. Like, they were doing the test because, like, they'd heard, like, the stories about Chinese water torture, this idea of, like, being restrained where you can't move and having a drop of water dropping on the same place in your head repeatedly in a consistent manner for an extended period of time. And it broke people. And, like, I remember that episode because they're like, well, this one, like, isn't, like, a physical thing. We'll take a volunteer. One of the aides, like, volunteered. I think it was Carrie, I think was her name. And she's like, okay, I'll do it. That's fine. I'm interested in this. And they strapped her down. They started it. And at first, she, like, they were talking to her. Like, that's the thing. She had human contact, too. Or maybe they didn't. No, they didn't. They were out. She knew they were outside the room. But, like, she couldn't talk to them directly. They were just, like, listening to her. And she started talking. And then she started, like, kind of, like, describing what her thought processes were and what was going on in her head. But then eventually she started to, like, get really nervous and she rattled. And then she's like saying, I don't know if I can keep going. And it was like, they were surprised because it wasn't even that long. And they're like, and then like, she started crying and they were like, they're like, all right, we got to stop this. So they went inside, they took her off and they brought her up and they talked about it. And she's like, it was like, she said that and she described it like that. She said that like the whole world like became like it was anticipating the next drop. The entire world, her whole existence, everything about her did that because it was cold water and it was like consistent, right? So it was an unpleasant experience, not painful, just unpleasant. But it became her whole world because she could do nothing else but anticipate that drop. And so her life, her whole body became an existence that was primed to think about that drop. And it was already rattling her after just a couple hours. Oh, no. That's freaking nuts. Returning to her senses, she breathed erratically as she tightened the grip on her sheets lining the bed. Her body trembled as those dark memories of hers resurfaced in her mind. The nurse that had been here in the room just a moment ago was already gone. Dinner had just arrived at the hospital, and the clamorous sounds that came from it resounded down the hall. Ayase tried to recall the words the nurse had spoken to her right before leaving. Was her headache really just a side effect of the drug she was on, or had it been caused by her hitting her head, perhaps? And perhaps it was just a hallucination brought forth by her past memories. That's crazy. She was unable to come to a decisive conclusion. So this ARC place probably was testing these giglomaniacs, and maybe they were trying to see if by giving, they could induce, like, delusions. Like, they could force them to happen. Wiping away the sweat that ran down her forehead, Ayase called forth a smile laced with self-loathing.
構わないわ。今さら何をされたって。あれを、あの神罰を耐え抜いたんだから。
Dang, they messed you up, girl.
迷わない。私は。
Murmuring in perhaps delirium, Ayase soon became aware of the sound reverberating through the hall. The comforting sound of shoes stepping on the linoleum floor. It was certainly not being made by a nurse, and the sound of footsteps was heading right for the room she was in. Someone knocked on her door, and she sealed her lips tight. Oh, it's going to be the investigator. Yeah. That someone was but a single man. He'd come bring gifts, namely a large basket filled with all manner of fruits. She could recognize the man, which was far from a good sign, thus she stared at him with a dubious glare.
どうも。あ、別に怪しいもんじゃないっすよ。自分は。
知ってるわ。
The man was a detective at Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department. He had once shadowed Ayase and was originally a suspect, she was originally a suspect in the NewGen case. The detective, relieved by her response, scratched his head and his demeanor unendingly casual.
いやー、嬉しいっす。君みたいな美人に覚えててもらえて。
Oh, yeah, you can cut that out.
記憶力いいんすね。
The detective moved closer to her bed. Ayase briefly glanced at her D-sword leaning against the window. It lay just outside her reach.
今日はお見舞いに来たんすよ。
そうは思えないわ。目的は？
鋭いっすね。
The detective flinched very overtly, his reaction perhaps bordering on theatrical.
まあ、ちょっと綾瀬ちゃんに聞きたいことがあって。
Yeah.
あ、これ、よかったら食べてほしいっす。
The detective smiled innocently, presenting the basket he brought with him, then placed it at Ayase's feet without waiting for approval.
うまいっすよ。あと、高かった。と。
Okay, you can... okay, that's enough of that.
いらない。
まあ、そう言わず、せっかく買ってきたんで。後でお母さんが来た時にでも切ってもらって。あ、しまった。綾瀬ちゃんはもう何年も両親に会ってないんだったっすね。
Right, you already know that, though. Despite the detective's insensitive remark, Ayase felt nothing in response to it. Her ties to her parents had been cut from a very young age. Her parents had a reputation to uphold, so a child that often caused problems like Ayase had been inconvenient to them, to say the least. Her only remaining contact with them was the wire transfer she received for her living expenses each month, though it could hardly be called that.
申し訳ないっす。
The detective apologized, bowing down hastily. Ayase had only just gotten over the shock caused by her flashback, so she was in no mood to speak with him. Nonetheless, she urged herself to talk all the same.
聞きたいことって何？アリバイ？
違うっすよ。それは前に散々聞いたし。もう綾瀬ちゃんの容疑は晴れたっす。君は白、真っ白。
Uh-huh.
目星はついたの？犯人の。
Yeah, yeah.
それは教えられないんすよ。捜査上の秘密っす。
匠。
秘密っす。
Interesting that, like, she also was wondering if it's Takumi too. The detective smirked. He was attempting to laugh the question away. And yet, something unrefined could be seen through the cracks of that smile.
しかし西条くんは不思議な少年っすね。
They only talked to him once. Why do they keep bringing him up in all these conversations?
彼を見ていると殺人の容疑者にはとても見えない。
Well, yeah.
もしあれで本当に犯人だったとしたら、まさに人の皮をかぶった悪魔っす。
Well, the argument they could be making is that he has that like sleeping personality, like that, like a second side to him, and that could be a really clever way of hiding things. Honestly, so good you yourself don't even know you're hiding things.
まだ容疑者なのね、彼。
いや、そういうわけじゃないっすよ。
The detective casually denied it with a smile, putting Ayase's persistent question to rest.
ああ、今の話誰にも言っちゃダメっすからね。情報漏洩すると上司に怒られるんすよ。まあ当然なんすけど、この前も先輩のとばっちりで怒られたばっかで。綾瀬ちゃんも一度会ってると思うんすけど、覚えてるかな。バンさんっていう髪がボサボサで武将髭生やしたおっさんでか。
Yeah, yeah. Ayase did remember him. When she had been questioned, that older detective had been even more talkative than the younger one she was conversing with now. His way of speaking had been a lot more assertive as well.
あの人がすぐこのバカって怒鳴るんすよ。そのくせ自分は本来の捜査をせずに、なんだかわけのわからないことばっか調べてて。
Yeah, well, he honestly is probably getting closer to the truth than anyone else.
挙句の果てに自分まで無理やり付き合わされて。最近胃が痛いんすよね。 いやまあ根はいい人っすし、勘が異常に鋭い人で、過去にも難事件をいくつか解決に導いたらしいんすけどね。
その話をするため
Yeah, I know, right? I feel like, is that why you're here, dude? Like, why are you talking about this?
ここに来たのは
Ayase interrupted the man, his smile quickly soured.
いや申し訳ないっす。つい愚痴入っちゃったっすね。今の話は全面的に内緒にしてほしいっす。諏訪守る、一生のお願いっすよ。
Alright, dude, calm down.
それで
一つ目はなんであんなことを？
Despite his ambiguous phrasing, Ayase could tell that he was referring to her diving off the school rooftop.
もう何度も話したわ。他の刑事さんに。
邪神王グラジオールの復活を阻止するためですか？
Gladiol. Who's King Gladiol? The wicked-hearted king.
死ぬつもりなんてなかった。魂を一つ上のステージに持っていこうとしただけよ。
例の若者の間で話題になった君の歌についても似たようなこと言ってたっすよね。
And that was the second question he had for her. Ayase let out a faint sigh.
ニュージェネのことを歌ったものなんかじゃないわ。あの詩は。グラジオール記目視録詩編のインスピレーションを受けて作った。第3章、102節よ。
Gladiol, Book of Psalms, Revelations, Chapter 3, Verse 102. What is that? Gladiol, Book of Psalms. So it's fictional. Okay. I was like, is that a thing? I'm like, high art fantasy novel based on Eastern Europe myth of Gladiol, the wicked-hearted king. With the saga in its entirety being told over the course of 23 volumes, it depicts a battle between the 7 Black Knights and Gladiol. It was written by R.C.O. Ziegler. Wait, Ziegler? That name's familiar, isn't it? From 1929 to 1951. Ziegler. That name is familiar somehow. I remember that. Was Ziegler the name of one of the people who had postulated a theory about the different world lines theory that was talked about in Steins Gate? The series has been translated into several languages, but never gained widespread appeal to its rather esoteric writing style. Ziegler's other works related to the Gladius mythos include Gladius Book of Kings, The Wicked Hearts, Apostolic Letter, and more. All these works are collectively referred to as the Gladiol Saga.
世界に邪神王グラジオールが現れようとしている。復活を阻止するには、グラジオールが流した黒い血によって作られた7つの杭が必要。
7 stakes forged in blackened blood. Could that be D swords? So, okay, for confirmed D swords, we have Ayase, Senna, Kozapi, and Senna, Kozapi. Okay. So we have those 3 for sure. We're pretty sure, we know that, Taku has one, so that'd be 4. We could assume maybe Rimi has one. 5. There's also Yua. She might develop one because she's a main character, so 6. So maybe there's one more, a 7th. That could work if everyone manifests their own sword. What did I say? Rimi has one. Maybe Rimi. So, Ayase, Senna, Kozapi, Rimi, Yua, Taku. Oh, okay, so 6. Maybe, and then maybe the last one's Shogun. So maybe that could be it.
杭は剣へと形を変え、神罰を乗り越えた7人の黒騎士の手に渡る。
Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely, it really is meaning the D swords.
目には目を、歯には歯を。邪神を背負いし人間だけが邪神王を滅ぼせるのよ。
That's kind of a cool idea. Only the wicked can overthrow the wicked-hearted king.
なんか映画みたいっすね。そういう壮大な設定は好きっす。
Ayase glared at the detective in response to his comment.
設定じゃないわ。
She's like, no, this is real.
現実よ。
じゃあ最後の質問っす。
The detective casually brushed away Ayase's objection, though she was all too used to this form of dismissal by now. Not a single person she told the story thus far had believed it.
君や西条くんの他にも水明の生徒について何人か洗ったんすけどね。
Wait a minute. NewGen deaths too. 7. Weren't there 7 of them? Maybe that's part of it. And maybe Shogun's the king, the wicked king. But that would imply that Shogun's not yet real, maybe? Like, is he like becoming real? I don't know. Huh. The detective mumbled to himself as he folded his arms. This was very obviously another act of theatrics, and Ayase had no intention of commenting on it.
何？
すごくバカバカしい質問なんすけど、刑事が質問するようなことじゃないんすよね、本当は。
Well then don't.
子供じみてるっていうか。
Okay.
そう。質問する気がないなら出て行って。
Yeah, thank you, Ayase. I like you. I really like you for that. Like, she's like, okay, look, if you're not gonna ask, then just leave. No, don't be waffling.
頭が痛いの。
いや、実はね、バンさんが妙なことを言い出してるんすよ。君たちは魔法使いなんじゃないかって。
Huh. Upon hearing that, the subject of that remark was plural, Ayase raised her eyebrows in suspicion.
違いますよね。
使えるわ。
Huh. As she replied, Ayase's line of sight was directed not toward the man, but toward her hand that lay atop her bed sheets.
綾瀬ちゃんって面白い子っすね。
でも、ニュージェネはグラジオールの騎士とは無関係。
そうっすか。
Okay.
まあどうでもいいんすけどね。
The detective, completely disinterested in what Ayase had just said, brushed off her words once again, then began to stretch. Why are you here asking questions if you don't care what the answers are? That makes no sense, dude. The moment he did so, a digital sound suddenly cut through the silence of the room. The detective, surprised by the interruption, reached into his pocket of his suit and took out a cell phone. It's like a marching song. Or like a video game tune.
まずった。病院って携帯禁止なんすよね。電源オフにしておくの忘れてた。うわ、しかも女からだし。
Uh-huh.
付き合って4年になるラブラブの彼女がいるんすよ。
Can you like leave then? He turned his phone off with a grin, forcing the caller to hang up, then turned to Ayase once more.
綾瀬ちゃんは映画見るっすか？スパークウォーズって知らない？
Spark
それに
Wars?
出てくるダース・スパイダー伯爵のテーマなんす。今のメロディー。
Alright, dude. Now you're implying you're somehow involved with the Shogun stuff. Are you on Shogun team right now? Like, that would be insane if he was an investigator for the actual NewGen cases and he's actually a member of the whole Shogun squad. Fetch me. That's terrifying to think about. Ayase had no interest in movies or anything of the sort. Having long since decided that she had no obligation to further entertain the detective's questioning, she returned to gazing silently out the window.
実は自分スパークウォーズオタクなんすよ。
Yeah, do you happen to have a Spark Wars Darth Spider mask that you've conveniently lost recently?
興味ないっすか？そりゃ失礼したっす。じゃ、自分はこれで。
Why would you specifically? Why did this interaction happen? With that, the detective concluded the conversation with her and had with which she had no partner, and left the hospital room. Ayase did not even turn around to watch him go. With the man gone, all that reflected in her eyes was the twilight sky slowly turning indigo. That was so weird. Why have that conversation if he's just missing everything that she says? What was the point? Oh, hey you.
このボケナスずっと待ってたんだからね。
To what?
あなたのことなんか大嫌い。でも大好き。
I stared into daze at Saratan as she moved around the monitor. The final episode of Blood Tune had aired deep into the last night. The story was gradually getting more and more intense, and the episode had received particularly high praise on that channel. You know what? We're probably going to be going into something bigger here, so let's just pause this for now, right? Let's take the break. We'll just live here. Okay, so analysis of what we saw. So Rimi really seems to care about Taku, and she was implying like stuff that she hasn't actually talked to him about yet, but it clearly is on her mind. So maybe if he actually pushed for her, she might she might give him some actual answers, but then when things started showing up about the NewGen stuff, she tried to immediately dismiss and disregard them, which is, like, it says a lot. She just doesn't want him worried about it at all, which is, like I said, if that kind of pacing of murders have been happening in your hometown, like even remotely close to your hometown in 2 months, like the grisly murders of that scale, of that like craziness, no one had been caught yet, and they all seem to be linked, I think people would just start being horrified and like scared to go anywhere, especially by themselves. And yet she's trying to dismiss it like it's nothing. That seems wrong. And then we had the Ayase encounter, which, like, cool, well, not cool, but, like, it's really interesting to see glimpses of her past, seeing that she was put through torture rather than therapy, but she managed to escape somehow. And then, like, to see, like, the investigator kid, Suwa, I think his name is, like, he showed up with a gift basket to ask her questions and dismissed every answer she gave him. Like, he didn't write it down, he didn't make note of it. It was like he didn't care what she said, he just wanted to ask the questions. Well, why? That makes no sense. Also, it made a clear link to him and the scene where Taku nearly jumped from the tower trying to get his D-sword. Like, it implies he might have been involved there. So it's making me think that he's like a double agent, or he's like working directly with Shogun, which, by the way, we also know Rimi's technically working with him too. So why is she being so helpful? Maybe that's part of why she's telling him not to worry, because she knows about the NewGen killings. Maybe she's perpetrating them because she seemed involved in the crucifixion one, right? So maybe she's doing all of them. Like, maybe that's really it is. Like, maybe he nailed it on the head the first time that Rimi is the NewGen killer, even though it seemed like she didn't exist until recently. I don't know. There's so much that's just, it's confusing and mind-boggling. I'm freaking invested, but, like, it feels like we're not getting any answers. And that's fine. But it still feels like a lot. Like, what is going on? Anyway, we'll deal with all that next time, I think. Thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed this episode. A lot of really interesting stuff. Brought up a few stories of my own, as usual. This game really gets me talking. Of all the other games we've been covering, this one definitely has me, like, I don't know. I'm feeling more of a vibe. Like, it's one of those scenarios where, like, I don't really get Taku at all, but I could see myself being involved in the scenario. Like, I could place myself, like, in this world, in the world building, and I'm trying to imagine, what would I do, or what would I be like, or what would I believe, what would I not believe? So it's so easy to put myself in their shoes, which is interesting, because like it's like I do that with all the visual novels, but there's something about the writing with this one and Steins Gate that just gets me somehow. Like, it pulls me in a way that a lot of visual novels don't. So I wonder why. I hope it's not that I don't think it's because I relate to Taku, because I really don't. Besides knowing internet culture in some degree, he's so weird, and frankly, he's been tough to go through the motions with at times, but all the same, I kind of get it. Maybe I can have sympathy for it. I don't know. I'm just rambling now. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a good day, especially the patrons and members. Your support for me is amazing. I don't deserve it, but I'm really grateful for it. But if you're just watching this video, like, you do more than enough on your own anyway, so thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day, good start to, I guess, end of your week. Yeah, I say start. No, it's the end of the week. Hope you have a good start to your weekend. And until this video watching me, I'll see you next. I'll see you there.